How's it going, everybody? Um, okay. Hope you're doing okay. Okay, I usually don't like videotaping myself because I get kind of subconscious and I tend not to focus on a topic. Dear White People was a movie that, if you actually saw it, encompasses a very wide spectrum of personas, people, aspects of the culture, and it has it all within the polished uh, campus setting of what is it, Yale, Harvard, some sort of prestigious Ivy League school. So it's not really a bias, even though it surprisingly has biases there. So from what I don't think is a place, because I'm kind of weighing, is it HBC, historically black college, or is it not? I don't know. But it made me think. For those who actually did decided to let go of their biases. Now, of course, if you watch the actual movie, but before watching the actual movie, you see the trailer, you're like, man, it's just taking shots at white people and stuff like that, and black people are like, yeah, let's finally hear somebody take shots, and then white people are probably like, just kind of like had a knee jerk reaction. Man, I ain't trying to see no video about taking shots at me or anybody like me. Like that's some ignorant stuff. But I'm like, it's like that's like if somebody said did black people, and we had those before. Um, but I won't go into that. I won't go too much into like the propaganda piece that's been toward us. But and I get it. People like they just can't connect to that. They actually literally have to hop outside themselves in their comfort zone to actually watch that. But that's neither here nor there. Like topic of the night is less about those aspects and more so about I guess firstly is more so about the aspects of the different people groups. And the focus is black and white. Now, and also it has another one. It had an Asian in there, and even then, that's very interesting because in America, um, when they're trying to conform to the main populace, and it's not is whites, but it's not just whites. It's whites and everyone else, or at least those that they live around. And even then, they themselves have to weigh uh, what aspect of culture do they have to conform to? Would they like to conform to? Is it their culture that their immigrant parents brought in, when they were fresh off the boat, or what the heck do they call them? They don't call them ABCs. They could call it ABCs. I think they call them something else though. But which is American born Chinese. But basically it's like they have to run that gambit and just go through the notion because it's like especially from what I can tell, if you've seen Crazy Rich Asians, it's like they have this I don't want to say dichotomy, but it's almost like a pluralism that they live by, but also reject. Like they have to abandon, because it's like their culture from the motherland is different from their culture here, even if it is conformed to their parents' immigrant ways. It's still different. It's like almost in a very light sense westernized. So it's like contaminated, if you want to call it that. Like I don't want to. That sounds a bit harsh, but that's what it seems like. It's contaminated. It's no longer just Eastern belief, Eastern practice of thought. But I only want to say that because I believe there's an Asian there, and she tried to be down with the black people there, from what I can tell. And it's like it reminded me of another movie, but I can't remember what it was. It was like Step Up or something like that. But it was an Asian there, and he said, "Hey, I like your accent," and she was like, "Accent? I don't have an accent," because it's like she believes she's one of them, but everybody can see that she's clearly different, and that's something that just blacks, especially in suburbia, they notice. They become kind of insecure about, and it's not really like a a shame on one person, shame on another person. It's just it's it's one of those things that is not addressed at a young age. It's just kind of like they have to embrace the world and its differences, and the other people around them have to too. I used to live in Wisconsin, and they saw my differences, and I saw theirs, and they saw my hair when it got big, and they wanted to touch it, and it wasn't a problem for me because I assumed they didn't. I was one of the first few black people that they've seen, so I didn't take offense to it. But and it's not like I was an animal. It was just I was different, you know. And even then, you have to deal with tokenism and token pride and all that stuff like that. And it's just like kind of like, who are you? Are you just this token in white society, or are you your own person with your own culture that's associated from who you are? And who are you? Who are you gonna choose to be? And you're not a victim to your culture. You're not a slave to your culture. You're not a slave to the culture you grew up in. But it's like ultimately you have to find your identity. So going back to this movie isn't too bad. Like it has whites in it. It has blacks in it. Now, as I said before, your initial reactions of watching Dear White People, to me, I think it's personally for shock value. Now, I haven't watched the series, but I did watch the movie, and I found the movie to be very enlightening because it not only spoke about like blackface and white ignorance, and that's one thing I'm really not a fan of, is ignorance on both sides. But and that it explores it. It's explores it when the it explores it in one of the characters where the character has to conform to urban, do I want to call it ghetto, um, to urban working class culture, um, and essentially the ratchet culture. So she has to conform to that. It's not really her culture. She's middle class, but she conforms to it. And so she becomes it for the sake of gaining more followers. She's not originally that. She's a nice person who gives beauty tips and such. In the very end, they have to perpetuate a similar reality TV themed thing in exploitation of his own people. These are black people. And we like to hint some things at like BET where they kind of do that. I don't know. I believe sort of that they've gotten sort of better, but it's almost like they deal kind of like they're like black excellence slash black, you know, poverty, or black, uh, uh, um, black ignorance. It's like they simultaneously push the two, and they feign ignorance about the black ignorance. They're like, oh well, I mean, it's just art, and it's just like, no, it's not art. Because you see it throughout the internet. You see it even in the nuances in the majority American culture, that when whites do ignorant stuff and they use black um, entertainment to do it, whether they have white people, these so-called boring everyman archetypes in movies like what, Martin Freeman, or what's his name? I don't want to say John Freeman, but I think it's Martin Freeman. It could have been John Freeman, because I always get their names confused. They always look kind of the same. Like for instance, the dude from The Hangover, or the lady from what's it, Bridget Jones, where they listen to like the crazy gangster rap to show that they're not the boring white people. Well, they're not just boring typical person, typical white actress who's going through the common tropes of rom-com. That they're different. Or even I was gonna say Bridget Jones, but I was gonna say Rebel Wilson. You know, just seeing her style of comedy. That's even less about her weight and more so about how she engages the world in this I don't give a F attitude, ID gaff attitude. Um, and it's I personally admire that kind of authenticity, because she's not just conforming to a certain standard that will be placed on her because of her size, because of her weight, but that she projects herself forward to be an actress in her own right. I forget the other one. The lady, her name is Precious. I mean, not her name is Precious. She played as Precious, the movie in Precious, but I forget her actual name. But if anybody has actually heard of her, her outside of the acting, she's very bubbly. She's very positive. I think they had her in the movie Tower Heist, and I guess someone from like who's actually spoke patois, the Jamaican language. He said like she was very good at portraying the Jamaican language because she was really he said she did very well, and I was like, good on her, man. She's actually like I like that. Like a person's character should override what people's perceptions of them. Okay, getting back to this main point, you have the main woman. I forget her name. I think it's by Tessa Thompson, and she plays as this almost like a revolutionary figure. And you see in the trailer where she's calling out black people, and she's calling out white people. And she's basically saying like you know, essentially calling out white ignorance. And that's something that I feel like majority of us really want is like because there's like this dichotomy that whites seem to face is that they can be wretched, they can be crazy and wild, and nothing really will happen to them, and they can even use that in use that in advantage of even taking advantage of blacks, whether it's like touching their hair or suggesting that they're down for black culture when they wear black things, but it's like maybe not when actual problems come, and so it's like it's like those that deep rooted feeling that we felt like, man, she's finally voiced concerns, and we thought that was like that 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 trailer was what we were gonna get. What we actually got from the movie wasn't that. It was actually that Tessa Thompson was mixed. But you don't learn that now. You learn that way later, and I guess you just assume that she's not mixed. You just assume she's just pro-black, and it's interesting because she has, from the very start, she has was it a a white father and a black mother, and she doesn't tell people about her white father, almost as if she's ashamed. But you don't know that. You just see her targeting white people in a fashion that calls them out on their ignorance. At least I would like to say it's on their ignorance, but just calls them out what seemingly seems to be a general fashion. So she does it, and we assume like she has good reason, even though she has a white parent. And she do I want to say I a white person falls for her, but even then she's facing identity issues. She still likes white things. She just has, at the time, she has this moment where the white guy is kind of like, he confronts her on her identity because she's not just black, she's also white, and she does that even in the trailer. He shows that like, you like Taylor Swift, she's a white artist, and the assumption of a black artist, a black so-called revolutionary, is one who is so entrenched in their culture that they don't really have time for um, the inclusion of other cultures. And now is more so like, it's not even like I love my culture enough that I don't really that other cultures are less in my priority. It's more like these militant, so-called militant, and these are like even what the media portrayed the Black Panthers to be militant, dangerous, scary, the angry black person, the dangerous black person. And so what is shown, and I think it's like what is it, media propaganda. I don't want to call it propaganda, but it's almost like a trick, almost like a sleight of hand. And it's like you'd assume her to be this revolutionary black revolutionary right fighter, and she wasn't. She in her personal life, she wasn't. She had white interests, hobbies, white parent. Just had all these things, and this was her dad, so she actually cared about her dad. And then it only kind of reaches her when she learns that her dad's, I think her dad's ill or something like that. And it's like, I actually care about my dad. I don't hate white people. I don't have really a, I, like, and it's like, it's almost like she doesn't really have a problem with white people. It's just, maybe this was an outlet for her trying to find her identity. And so at the very end, and this white man who likes her, I forget his actual name, he is very patient with her throughout this time. Like, even when they're getting intimate, he's very patient, and that's a very subtle nuance that's there, because it doesn't really paint this white man as a savior figure, or someone that she has to kind of like lure, or she has to um, do the right thing, be the better person. She doesn't have to conform, or not conform, but compromise her blackness for the sake of him. You know, what he does is just simply reveal to her what's already there, and he walks with her. He's patient. He's humble. He's the one who's doing all the work in terms of trying to get her to not just accept him, because it's not really about him. He doesn't make it about him. He just lets her know. He confronts her on her own self and identity, because he points out, the lie about yourself is that you think that you're black fully 100%, and you're very upset at white people for reasons that you have not so much come up with, but reasons that you have found. Even though you have a white parent, you don't really have it's not really have a reason. It's more so like, why are you suppressing this side of yourself? And that's what I did find very interesting in terms of their dynamic. And there's a lot of dynamics in this movie. Don't get me wrong. That's one of the reasons why I do like it, because it was so much content there. Another one was this gay guy. I forget. It was from the main lead from Everybody Hates Chris. It wasn't Chris Rock. It was I forget his name. It could have been Michael something. And he plays as a black gay person who is shown as a person he's shown by his sexuality, but he's also shown as himself. Now he shows that he is not only ostracized by the black community, but also by the white community. And even when he actually finally tries to find his niche, not only as a gay person, but a person with his own character, and there seems to be a person who finally accepts him for who he is in his character, as well as his sexuality. It turns out the same person only fetishizes him as a black person, as a chocolate drop, as he calls it. I think it was something like that, and he realizes at that moment that I can't just like it's not it's not my responsibility to simply be accepted. I have to accept myself. And not only that, one of the jocks of the time, again, this movie is wonderful. You just need to get past the shock value of it, of the name and the trailer. The jock there who's living in a prestigious school, so I believe he represents the second generation of the bourgeoisie, and his father, who's the dean, represents the previous generation of the bourgeoisie, the bougie. Even though one of the ladies there, who was a YouTuber, she represents it as well, but she's the one who doesn't accept herself. She represents self-hate. And at the same time, it's not even the fact that she's trying to be pro-black. It's more so the fact that she doesn't accept herself where she's at. She doesn't accept the fact that she's a middle-class black woman, and that she doesn't have to conform, but she does conform for the sake of fame. And so, in a sense, she almost like sells her cultural soul, sells her identity for the sake of views, of YouTube views. And so the gentleman at the time, he's trying to fight to be was it president, like class rep or something like that, class president. and he goes against Tessa Thompson, who's the so-called pro-black revolutionary, and she is just as adamant and just as intelligent and just as concerned about issues that are, of course, pro-black themed. But for him, he just wants to live as he wants to. He wants to live his own identity, but he's under his father's shadow and his father's expectations. So, given that he dates a white woman, and even in his girlfriend, who happens to be white, she dates him for him being a black man and the associations and expectations that has to do with that. Now his dynamics more so, and he is more so, I want to be myself, but all these expectations are weighing me down. And Tessa Thompson's character is, I don't want to be myself. I'm going to adhere to those expectations and essentially weigh myself down by those expectations. And so, the guy is in this battle, this cultural battle, and this battle of identity. Now we have another character who's this white man. Let's call him a white young adult because he's actually an immature. Uh, do I want to call him an adolescent figure? Yeah, he's more so in his 20s, but he's still kind of a childish figure. And so he himself is like the antagonist because he stirs the pot. Without him, there really wouldn't be too much change or entanglement. So for him, he's just as he rejects the gay person. He sees the cultural values of blacks and the cultural expectations of blacks, and he himself conforms to them. He doesn't. He, to me, I like to say he represents, or at least at the time represented the youth, the white ignorant youth at the time, who simply conform to values that they're unaware of, that are unknowingly harmful toward the black race. So he conforms to them. And when Tessa Thompson's character, who's at the time a pro-black character, she confronts him on it. He is unwilling to back down from those values because of his personal beliefs and ignorance. His father is, to me, representative of the past generation of whites who were ignorant, who are culturally ignorant of other cultures, who didn't see a problem, who didn't see racial tension, who were the ones who essentially ignored that there was even a racial issue to begin with. And you see a conversation between the young black man who was running for class rep or something like that, his father, and the young white childish kid man's father, in a dialogue. Now he knows as black that blacks have expectations to live up to. Now he has wholeheartedly lived up to them. So for me, I like to believe he's definitely the bourgeoisie, but also he's the white kid's father represents the ruling class of America, who don't see that there's even an issue, but the black father, where he knows that he has to be excellent. He understands that being in this upperclassman, that he, and not only he but people around him, has to have this a very upper class behavior and motif. Do I want to call it motif? I guess I'll call it behavior. I was thinking, I'm like, maybe not motif, but and he imposes that on his son, and so and that's the thing. I'm not sure if he's the dean or if he's like the superintendent or something like that, but his son, now he wants to conform to black culture in the way he sees it, in the more urban working class entertainment setting of drill music, rap music, hip hop, etc., etc., etc. and he is unashamed, and he's culturally ignorant. So it's not really like he is unaware like his father. He is intentionally aware, and he doesn't care what it does to black people. So he adds on to the fire of ignorance. In the same way that the self-hating young black woman, denied her middle class culture and conformed to black ignorance. And you now, on the other side of the spectrum, you have the actual person who, the young black woman, when she decided to do that, she linked up with this man who had a TV show, and it was like a black reality TV show. And he himself conformed. Let's say for him, he has given in to black ignorance, and he has not only given in, but he's perpetuated it through money, for monetary gain. So he's really all about self, as much as the young white man is all about self. They're really all about, they're on the ends of the spectrum in terms of white ignorance and black ignorance. And so and so wow. And so which is another interesting thing, is because he's the one he's almost like, he's very close, akin to a devil's advocate, but he's not. He's basically the devil. He's giving out ignorance, and he doesn't really care who he affects. He just cares about himself, his ratings, and what can people do to amp up things, to stir the pot. He doesn't really care about black culture. He doesn't really care about black sensitivities or how the world views them. He's more so just about that sweet cash. And at the very end, the bourgeoisie black man is almost opposed. He's like, you're not gonna get this filth to my students. But the white man's like, tell me more. Again, he's not only, he's delving from his what's the word, maybe meek, I don't know. It's kind of like he's unaware. But then at the very end, he becomes intrigued and interested in black ignorance that this man is selling. And so, and the other guy kind of like, he's under him. He's under the white man, but, and the father is under the white man, but he's still like, he in a sense has to conform, from what I can tell. I don't know if he actually stops, but yeah. Is there anybody else? Maybe there's like a few, maybe, but not really. Maybe like the Jack who was under his father, the black Jack who was under his father's pressure and his white girlfriend's pressure. Like the only thing I can say is that him and the gay guy at the time, and I call him a gay guy because that's one of his defining features, is just being gay. Even though I think he works for the radio, he's witty, I think he has stories and stuff like that. He has a lot of character within himself, even for his minor role. But him and the Jack actually form some sort of a bond, and which is near the end of the conflict. The young white man tries to battle him, and try to battle the Jack, but it's like he has to stand up for himself. The young gay guy has to stand up for himself and not be a fetish, not be fetishized, but to be who he is, and that is who he is. He's a black man who happens to be gay, and he conforms to that by kissing the guy who is the young white man who is a bigot. And so he kisses him. He knows that that's the most volatile, the most shocking thing he can get out of him. So he knows that like this guy is he's just everything that potentially, he's just kind of like the worst of America, let's call it that. And so he's like, he goes head on and he gives that dude a big smooch, and that dude almost loses his cool. He loses his shit, and he almost like is quick to attack him, like that. Like he almost doesn't care. He's going to end this man's life if possible. But then I guess the Jock stepped in to save him, because it's like it shows like kind of like the progressive nature of like, if if the straight son of the bourgeoisie black man can even get to understand and know, form a bond, form a relationship, so form a friendship, mutual relationship or friendship with the young gay guy. They're both black. They both can be friendly. He doesn't have to full on love him, but he does have to. But he can accept them and be his friend, you know. And so that's what I did. I did find that likable. And, at the very end, it shows some Tessa Thompson's transformation from the pro black woman who denies her personal mixed culture. So again, this is, again, I've had this in another video. Sorry, it's almost finished. She is the sign of black progression, but she herself deals with black identity issues. She is the sign of black progression, of actually American progression, but she still herself is struggling and is troubled. I might have another idea about that, but yeah, that's another video. Take care.